This is the first of my classes exclusively meant for writing. I am conceiving this course as a kind of without any reference to the content, completely on the skills and techniques, because I want to focus on the content in the test series. Okay. In the test series, I want to identify what are all the dimensions you need to know. Dimensions in any test series, be it anthro or socio or ethics and essay. I want to set questions on all the required dimensions and focus on those dimensions. So it means we are going to devote exclusively to the content. So this on the skills. Okay. So how do I want to go about it, or in fact we really don't know very clearly how we can really help. So I am planning some observations, to share some observations and then give writing practice. Writing practice without reference to the content. Okay. I will give my set of observations and I expect you to question, discuss and probably differ in certain ways and evolve your own way of writing. Okay. I am not saying that this is how you should write and then every one of you should stick to it. It is not like that. So probably the classes will highlight certain issues on which I will explain my stand and you can take your stand. Maybe I will consider these classes successful if you come to think there can be a lot to think about. There can be a lot to think about writing in itself. Okay. Not simply a certain set of techniques, that if you come to think that there can be a lot of theory related to writing. Okay. Part of reason why I wanted to take separate classes is this book, The Art of Non-Fiction by Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand is an extremely powerful writer. She was a Russian but learnt English and she became a world famous novelist and a philosopher. what she wrote in 1940s. It is still being read. Fountainhead is written years ago, 40s. And then after that, Last Shrugged. It's an extremely powerful writer. So the context of this, I first read The Art of Fiction. I didn't know there was a book like Art of Non-Fiction. Somebody gave me The Art of Fiction and I liked it a lot. Then only recently I came to know that there was another book, The Art of Non-Fiction. Then I felt this art of non-fiction might be helpful for our writing purpose. So interestingly, she didn't write these books. What she did was, she wanted to spend some time discussing certain issues related to writing with the people working and writing for her magazine. Okay. So she spent some evenings on discussion related issues. The source of this book was 16 such meetings with 12 of her friends. So the conversations were recorded and the authors edited and produced it as a book, deleting a lot of other things related to philosophy. Okay. So I'm planning to cover this book in 2-3 classes. This is my first class. Okay. So what I felt that what she had to say has implications to our examination, to our approach, to our requirements. Okay. But before I go to the book, I want to say a few things about what are usually discussed under writing techniques, because I'm sure you have those questions, and as long as you have those questions, you may not pay attention to what I'm saying. Okay, so let us settle those things first. Points. I know you have this, you think these things are extremely important. Points, write in points, flow charts, subheads, underline, diagrams. Okay. I noticed that many students are saying you should write like that: flow chart, subheadlines, underline, diagrams, quotations. Quotation is different. Okay. So what do I say about them? They can be very much essential, needed. But what is their purpose? The purpose is they are highlighters. They are just highlighters. Underline, highlights. Subhead, highlights. Headings, diagrams, flowcharts. It is highlighting the content. That is not the content. People discuss a lot about whether underlining fetches marks. I can only say underlining doesn't, but the point that you underline may fetch. Isn't it? You are missing the content. Flowchart doesn't. The idea that you convey through flowchart, if it is worthwhile, will get you marks. Isn't it? So in an examination context, these are the things that contribute to faster and easier evaluation by the examiner. Faster and easier evaluation by the examiner. We can say, given our examination context, any device that contributes to faster and easier evaluation by the examiner should be followed. Anything, any device. But these are not the substitutes to content. These are the carriers of the content. So I would say all of them can be called under highlighters. So is this point clear to you? I hope we don't have to discuss so much on that. Be it a diagram, a flow chart, subheadline, color pencils, felt pen, do everything to draw the examiner's attention. The general principle is that with less effort, you should draw his attention to your important point. With less effort from his side. With less effort, less time, you should draw his attention to important parts of your answer and then your overall answer. Devise everything, anything for that purpose. Is that settled? So, that is a very simple issue. So, do everything and we will definitely look in the examination, we will definitely see in the examination how we can employ those things. But let us not discuss them here. Here the discussion is on the content, not on flowchart and diagram. The discussion here is on the content. Okay. We will look into that, not before that, we're looking into. That's fine, we're coming to that. So I have covered only those highlighters, we didn't cover anything. Highlighters are only highlighters, we'll call them highlighters. They highlight something, but we are discussing what is it that we should highlight. Okay, so we'll call all of them as highlighters and settle that. We need highlighters. Now, it is about, our discussion is on the content. Okay. So what does Ayn Rand have to say on the content? See, why I like this book compared to other books is that other books are giving series of certain techniques without raising certain broader issues. So what Ayn Rand does is, she raises certain broader issues. So one such broader issue is thinking. To writing. Good writing comes from clear thinking. That is the first thing. Good writing comes from clear thinking. Or clarity in writing comes from clarity in thinking. So it is connected to thinking process. And how, we are not going into details into how clear thinking comes, but briefly we can say this thinking is related to reading. Reading with questions in mind. Reading with questions in mind critical thinking should be a part of reading. How do you read? I have seen not only the students but the people who are making presentations, summarizing newspaper articles or civil service teachers. What they are doing is they have an article, so Hindu editorial, like this. They just reproduce this one, this one, this one. So the author said this, author said this, author said this, then 1 plus 2, 3 is like this. So they take, I mean, something, there is nothing much to investigate. One person is saying, they say think independently. What is there to think independently? After all, whatever you wanted to think has already been thought before. So independent thinking is nothing but thinking from Hindu editorials. I was shocked. Just summarizing and mugging up. It is not like that. You have an article like this. This article wants to prove a point. The first thing is that you may not be interested in this point at all. You may have read for some purpose. You may find that something here is important. This is what you have learned. So you have some questions in your mind, and then this article partly answers your question or raises further questions. So you learn something from it, and then you make a note. This is what he said. This is the reason he gave. But some questions remain. Some not addressed. That's all. What you learn from the article need not be what the author wanted to convey. You read from your questions. So you may be interested in this point, or you may not be interested. So read with freedom. This is what I learned. But these are the questions that remain. This is not answered. Even a book, people ask me how to read fast. I don't know why they want to read fast. The assumption in that when he's asked how to read fast, the assumption is that he wants to read everything. It's not needed. It may be 1,000-page book, but what you want to learn may be there in few pages. Or only few pages may be relevant. Just read those pages and see if those things are answered. Skip hundreds of pages and spend 5 days on 4 pages. That is how we should read. Read with your questions. But I'm not saying your question should be fixed. You are reading with your questions, but when you read something else, it raises some other question, then you find that is more important. And then you have a new set of questions. So you are an autonomous individual seeking knowledge, not that whatever he wants to dump, you take it and put it inside. Students' attitude is that it is like this, they memorize, and the question how to write. How will they write? Do you know, as she says in an interesting way, to write one sentence, you should know 10 sentences. Isn't it true? But haven't you seen instructors saying that if you have to write 250 words, you need to know 250 words? I am preparing for 50-word answers, so I only have to learn 50 words. It's not like that. To write meaningfully 50 words, you have to write more than 500 words. When you know this much, then you will make your own sentences out of this and you will learn sentence. So an author who has written a book in the examination, how we can employ those things. But let us not discuss them here. Here the discussion is on the content, not on flowchart and diagram. The discussion here is on the content. Okay. We will look into that. Not before that. We'll look into. That's fine. We're coming to that. So I have covered only those highlighters. We didn't cover anything. Highlighters are only highlighters. We'll call them highlighters. They highlight something, but we are discussing what is it that we should highlight. Okay. So we'll call all of them as highlighters and settle that. We need highlighters. Now, it is about, our discussion is on the content. Okay. So what does Ayn Rand have to say on the content? See, why I like this book compared to other books is that other books are giving series of certain techniques without raising certain broader issues. So what Ayn Rand does is, she raises certain broader issues. So one such broader issue is thinking. To writing. Good writing comes from clear thinking. That is the first thing. Good writing comes from clear thinking. Or clarity in writing comes from clarity in thinking. So it is connected to thinking process. And how, we are not going into details into how clear thinking comes, but briefly we can say this thinking is related to reading. Reading with questions in mind. Reading with questions in mind. critical thinking should be a part of reading. How do you read? I have seen not only the students but the people who are making presentations, summarizing newspaper articles or civil service teachers. What they are doing is they have an article, so Hindu editorial, like this. They just reproduce this one, this one, this one. So the author said this, author said this, author said this, then 1 plus 2, 3 is like this. So they take, I mean, something, there is nothing much to investigate. One person is saying, they say think independently. What is there to think independently? After all, whatever you wanted to think has already been thought before. So independent thinking is nothing but thinking from Hindu editorials. I was shocked. Just summarizing and mugging up. It is not like that. You have an article like this. This article wants to prove a point. The first thing is that you may not be interested in this point at all. You may have read for some purpose. You may find that something here is important. This is what you have learnt. So you have some questions in your mind, and then this article partly answers your question or raises further questions. So you learn something from it, and then you make a note. This is what he said. This is the reason he gave. But some questions remain. Some not addressed. That's all. What you learn from the article need not be what the author wanted to convey. You read from your questions. You may be interested in this point, or you may not be interested. So read with freedom. This is what I learned. But these are the questions that remain. This is not answered. Even a book. People ask me how to read fast. I don't know why they want to read fast. The assumption in that when he's asked how to read fast, the assumption is that he wants to read everything. It's not needed. It may be a 1,000-page book, but what you want to learn may be there in few pages. Or only few pages may be relevant. Just read those pages and see if those things are answered. Skip hundreds of pages and spend 5 days on 4 pages. That is how we should read. Read with your questions. But I'm not saying your question should be fixed. You are reading with your questions, but when you read something else, it raises some other question, then you find that is more important. And then you have a new set of questions. So you are an autonomous individual seeking knowledge, not that whatever he wants to dump, you take it and put it inside. Students' attitude is that it is like this, they memorize, and the question how to write. How will they write? Do you know, as she says in an interesting way, to write one sentence, you should know 10 sentences. Isn't it true? But haven't you seen instructors saying that if you have to write 250 words, you need to know 250 words? I am preparing for 50-word answers, so I only have to learn 50 words. It's not like that. To write meaningfully 50 words, you have to write more than 500 words. When you write, when you know this much, then you will make your own sentences out of this and you will learn sentence. So an author who has written a book, knows much more than what he has written. That is why he can answer many questions. Because behind every sentence that is expressed, there is a lot that is not expressed. He chose to express one sentence, eliminating 9 others. But that sentence comes out well because he has 9 other sentences. So thinking, reading gives enough space in your mind or enough content in your mind out of which a nice sentence, a good sentence can be made. If you are looking at the final sentence and then say, my sentence is not that good, it doesn't come out like that. If you say my sentence is not good, some people compare like this. My sentence is not good, his sentence is good, though I know what he says. Do you know what is wrong with it? You may know what he says, but he knows more than what he said. So when you know much more, you will be able to make crisp and effective sentences. So a good writer is primarily a clear thinker. What students think is that they are not likely to think they have not understood or they are not clear about. They just see something and then they just think it's all writing problem. There may be writing problem. We are not denying that. But behind the writing problem, there are thinking related issues. So, reading, thinking, writing are all related. You cannot say, I will remain like this and write this and tell me how to write well. Flowcharts is the solution. If your question is so specific. Whereas, if you want to raise the content, then this is reading, thinking, writing. These are all related. Tell me, is this point clear? Is this also clear? So read any article looking for something, looking for the gaps. See how the article addresses those gaps. Right. Like that. Where it doesn't, raise questions. Your notes should consist of questions. People are uncomfortable with a question. Some people say, if you have a doubt, I will see to it that it is removed. It need not be removed at all. In a good education, one doubt is removed, in its place 10 doubts should come. Not the doubts are removed. So when you learn something, something is answered, but something else, something new becomes unanswered. So education is not getting answers only, it is raising questions. That is a way to learn. So thinking is linked to writing, and that comes from reading. And this is the way to read. Is it clear? Suppose you have to summarize in your notes. People who do summarize, they follow exactly this order. So when I tell students, okay, I'm putting it differently, make notes in your own words, and why they find it difficult to make notes in their own words, because they don't have theme of their own. So they see this, they take this article as final, and they want to reproduce. On the other hand, if they are learning something from it, and if they have to write their learning, then their organization itself will be different. So if you have to rewrite, you may ignore this, you may ignore this, you may ignore this, and here you may devote more time. Or this may not be the order. You may write 3 first, once, next, and 2. So after reading, you have to have your own theme, and then from that theme, you should decide the structure. He followed 1, 2, 3, given his theme and given the size. But given your theme, it may be 3, 1, 2, whatever. Or it may be completely different. Or you just take a point. So, you have to see what you are learning from the article and then write your observations. So, active reading involves writing. And if you ask me, that is the best way of developing writing skills, not writing exams. Whatever you are reading, write your observations and write questions. This is how it is. So if this part is clear, I will go to next, please. Why, if it is current affairs material, why shouldn't you? Maybe there are only some facts. Then write some facts. No, just note down, underline. But behind the facts, you have an observation to make. Write that observation in your own words. Some place is here. You don't have any opinion on that. Geography map or whatever. Whatever you think are relevant facts, you just underline. But after the facts, you must have thought about it, thought about something. You must have come to an opinion on it. So factual part you may simply reproduce. Where you don't have an opinion, But there are many things in which you have an opinion, where you are expected to think. So there you make notes. Of course, if you take current affairs as factual, then what is the exam then? I don't know which. I think vision material may be helpful in identifying topics, may identify some points, but I don't know if you can make notes. I'm not sure. I'm not very familiar. If that is the reading source, you can't really develop your own opinion on it. I don't think that can be the main reading source. That can be a revision source. That can be helpful for revision. That can be helpful for to identify a topic. I don't think from vision material you can understand anything. It's not like that. If you have already understood something, you may find certain points useful, or may be useful to identify. I don't think that is something that will help you to understand issues. I don't think so. So you read mainstream main papers, watch events, make your own notes. Because there are too many things that are happening, you follow a magazine. Okay. Please. Have your own theme. Yes. What do yeah, that's an issue. What is the theme exactly? Okay, you are almost starting with a blank slate. You just have no clue. He said something on Indo-US relations. Write these points. Just ask questions. Why is he saying like this? So remember, as you learn more, your reading will be more efficient. Somebody like UN Secretary General probably will read around 40 newspapers. Because he knows exactly what to look for. So, when you have no clue to the relationship, then you read these questions. Start with the questions. So, you have something. And then next time when you read Indo-US relations, then examine from these questions. Or something else. Okay. So what poor reading is, Indo-US, this article, done. This article, no relationship with another article. All views only. Somebody's views all clubbed up here. There won't be any space. See, learning is a process of transformation. If you have learned something, it is not addition. It should transform what has been learned before. Learning is not an additive process. That is the right way of learning. Not that this article, this material, that material are crushed. So if I learned something, what did I learn? What were the views I held? What does this article do? As you question, you will develop your certain views. And let me tell you, if people find current affairs is so intimidating, it is because mostly they don't have perspectives. And if they have perspectives, current affairs, far from being intimidating, you will find most of it is rubbish. If you have developed certain views and critical perspectives, you will find most of it is unnecessary. There will be certain critical events. Pay attention to those critical events and the connections. So much of you think that so much of knowledge is being generated. It's not true. So much of nonsense, so much of information nonsense is being generated. So many debates, so much of analysis doesn't stand scrutiny of certain sane questions. Then you will feel, okay, I should be in touch with certain critical events. Don't really have to bother about so many views and opinions, so much. It is not necessary. And actually, if you are a critical reader, if you take the newspaper, you will just see here and there some minor events, but which may not be covered as a headline, but something of importance. What is the headline may not be important, but some event reported at some other place will be important. And also you will notice the world is not changing very fast. It's the same thing, same problem. They have been fighting for years. So if you know what is the basis of that problem, you don't have to follow. Syrian conflict is this. How does it change? Only the number of deaths. Isn't it? So even after 6 months, if you go back and examine the old issues, you will see the world is exactly the same. People are quarreling on the same issues, arguing in the same ways. So you won't miss them. That's true. We are saying this is the proposal. The proposal is don't trust. Is it? Questions. You will not begin with the themes. With the questions, once the questions, you will see some people saying in a more consistent way, more logical way. Then you will develop the ability to see this is a quality source, this is cheap source. This man makes sense. So the first step you have to make is like this, questions. So it will take more time. But then one article may take more time. But in this way you don't have to read many articles. That is how you will spend less time. So then over a period of time you will develop very, very few articles. After all, there are very extremely limited number of sensible people in the world. So listen and key events to watch, key developments to watch, and few sensible people. What is it that these people have been saying? That's all. It is from this. It is from asking questions then over a period of time. I mean, I'm just saying where to start. I don't know if there is any other way to start. Exactly. But what is the alternative? If you can give me shortcut, I will follow. We'll suggest. But what is the alternative?
But sometimes you need to fix the things.
You need to?
Fix the things in a short period of time. Suppose if you have an exam for 3 months or
That is true.
in that case we have to make.
That is true. That is the nature of the examination. You have to read so many things. So, but then even when you have to read so many things, then you ask some questions. Identify certain issues and ask questions. See, we are not saying these questions need to be answered. They need not be answered. Just say this much I know, this much I do not know. We are not saying that you should finally come with certain specific conclusions. It is not like that. It is simply more conscious and more attentive reading, which leads to critical thinking. Critical thinking will generate such a space that gives rise to quality writing. That is the primary source of good writing, not flowcharts.
These questions that we raise for every article or anything that we read, is there any right or wrong direction in?
There is nothing like right or wrong. What is right is to ask questions. That's all. There is nothing like wrong questions. Right, ask questions. Keep asking. Don't be intimidated by the popularity of the reader. Sorry, the writer. So is this settled? Can we go to the next section? Why shouldn't we have extreme views? We should have why extreme? We should have seditious views. But what we should do is, we will write in the exam what is allowed to be written. That's all. So, think freely. Free. Don't say, if I think like this, I may write like that, they will not give me marks, please. Think freely, but whatever the lie that they want you to say, under the condition that if you say it, we'll give marks, say it. Please, definitely. So, what is your answer? But why are you asking that question?
Generally, sir, we read something, critical in the books, and we observe in the real society completely different from what we see. Suppose for government politics, there are clear-cut instructions for the governors to follow these certain rules, but they are not following. But in the examination, what to do, how to introduce them, whether we should introduce what is there in the books or what we observe in the society, real society.
No, I think we need to discuss the nature of the exam. Your example. Actually, this exam is good enough. I can say that if you say that the governors are behaving well, that will be a very bad answer. You won't get marks. If your question is on governor, I think you should write what all you know. The governor's institution in practice. You are expected to write critically. I have no doubts. You are expected to write. Not that you can also write. You are expected to write critically. You are expected to be critical of government schemes, economic models, institutions, politics, elections, everything. Probably what you cannot be expected to be critical is Kashmir or something like the preamble. That's all. So within the preamble, you can criticize, not only you can criticize, you are expected to criticize in this exam. That's what is good about the exam. So you should think critically. Only when your thinking is beyond, the preamble. Then you have serious issues, which you shouldn't express. You are a supporter of Naxalism. You can't. Supporter of separatism in Kashmir. You can't express. But then there are very few. You can be critical of foreign policy, economic models, and definitely government policies, corruption. All of them you are supposed to be critical. Okay, so I didn't know you were asking that. So anyway, so it is not only the preamble, even outside the preamble, ask questions, and you are expected to be critical. This is one. Okay, but his question is different. I mean, his question can have broader meaning. Suppose you are not going to write what you think. Why should you think at all? I think imposing restrictions on thinking will affect our own intellectual growth. Will affect. Okay. I think we should feel free to think and express what needs to be expressed. And also that is a part of everyday behavior also. You think certain things about your friend, but will you say what all you think about that friend? You won't. Then will you say, what is the point in thinking like that about my friend when I can't express? When you can't think freely, far from believing about what you express, you will be crushed. So my principle is that think freely. And while coming to expression, you see the consequences of your expression. So that's true of the exam, mains exam, interview, or day-to-day communication. I think that is human nature. Think freely, but express with restraint. Okay. And how will that shape the expression? I think if you know more, if you know the limitation, then your expression will be more accurate. Even if you choose to lie, if you know the truth, probably you will lie more effectively. You will know exactly how to lie. Isn't it? So, what I mean to say is that a proper expression requires higher base in thinking. Expression is not about expression. Expression requires a foundation. It requires a wider base in thinking. So the idea when you are not going to express why should I think is not the right way. Thinking is a wider thing. Out of that, sentences come out. So the beauty of a sentence is determined by the base from which the sentence is being generated. If you know only that, you can't make that sentence. If you know much more, then you can make. Haven't you seen for example, when students are giving presentations, haven't you seen students taking classes? Students read something and they just want to express it. Okay? But they will have difficulty because what they have chosen to teach is just what they have read. Nothing more. Whereas an experienced teacher may have read something much more than what he is teaching. That's why his expression will be different. So is this point clear? Okay. Indo-US, one article, two article, three articles, four articles. But cast, maybe 20 articles, like this. Two articles, like that's the difference. In optional, you have to read more and more, like this. Here, very little. I don't think GS is something you need to read without questioning, and optional you have to read with questioning. Not like that. So more depth will be acquired in the optional, and here less depth and more area. So I don't think GS is something that you should study without questioning, and only at optional you should question. Not like that. So more coverage, so less. Here less coverage and more.
So the same issue to take the IR aspect. How would a GS student read compared to PSIR optional institute?
Same thing.
I mean, it will be the same but
Depth. Okay. Coming to writing now. Second point. Next issue is about theme. She says an article should have a theme. So this theme is an important issue. It should have one theme. I mean that how much ever you write, you should be in a position to state it within few sentences. If you are in a position to state that, that is the thing. And here she has some observations. I think these are very important. Theme level. I think it is a very important concept. Theme level means she's talking about an article and we're talking about answer. Whatever the theme that you want to have, how high or how complex it is an issue. That is the first decision you should make. Theme level can be very low, can be very high. Poor writing often involves choosing a theme much higher than what they can handle. That is, what do you want to say? So she talks about how ambitious is the theme. I find we can discuss movies, for example. It is said as a good movie is the one, simple theme, but well told. It is a good movie. Okay. well told. But if you choose a complex theme and poorly expressed, it's false. Okay. But then, should we choose a simpler themes always? Not necessary. Give a push to the level that you can handle. To what level you can take. Given this thing, well told, which means clarity. Just once. We'll try this for some more time. See, the clarity should be given. But given that clarity, what is the level at which you can take? To what level you can take? I think this is a very important observation she is making. She says, some people take very ambitious themes and fail. Did you see this movie Bujjigadu? What is the story? Two children, boy and a girl, quarrel. Girl was constructing one temple in a sand. This boy comes and destroys it. And she says, don't talk to me. He asks for how long? 15 years. And that boy goes to Chennai, comes back after 15 years in search of the girl. And they get married. It's Puri Jagannath's. What I liked in that movie is that this man chose something ridiculous. But then he narrated the story so well that we are drawn. It is a ridiculous story. You may find it ridiculous, but it is interesting to watch. That's a good example of very simple theme, but very well told. So this is called theme level. If you want to high complex things, political, economic themes, terrorism, and then mess up things, that will be bad. So, what you should think in this exam is that theme level. To me, it's very important. Okay? And then, another constraint here is that size, time. She was discussing articles, but our constraint is about the size and time. I think we will first accept the constraints, and then within the constraints we can think of the variables over which we have control. So size is a constraint, time is a constraint. So the theme becomes a variable. A theme which you can handle, a higher level theme may be handled outside the exam, but within the examination, maybe that level of that theme may not be appropriate. So what is the theme? Okay. And once the theme is fixed, then she says, go for an outline. What is an outline? Outline, she says, consists of what she uses, sequences. Outline consists of sequences. Sequence 1, sequence 2, sequence 3. Each sequence will consist of certain paragraphs. Okay. Why this discussion is important is that clarity is important, and with the clarity, a particular theme should be brought about. This clarity, this theme should be brought about through certain sequences. So those sequences are nothing but logically connected content, like this. So what is important? What is the importance of this? The importance of this is that everything that you write is connected to this. This division is a logical division finally moving towards theme. Okay. So within this you can determine para order. Which paragraph should come first and which paragraph next? Para size. He says these are flexible. Para size, para order. All that should flow logically connected to the theme. And then she discusses introduction. Of course, you need not write introduction, body and conclusion. So what is an introduction? Here she says, certain important observations. Introduction is something that should mention what it is going to be. What it is going to be. But here there are many issues. I think people ask me about, I keep saying that in a two-liner you should say what your essay is. But people ask me, is it not a conclusion? Okay, so there are many questions there. So what we can say is that introduction is about what it is going to be, some kind of warming up, some kind of an invitation, which is not the same thing as saying everything. If you say everything, then you are killing what she calls climax. The climax, what is called climax in fiction, can be like conclusion in a non-fiction. If you have introduced in such a way that you propose a grand scheme and don't justify it, then it leads to anticlimax. But if you say everything in the introduction itself, then it makes the rest dull. So you should have the sense of judgment. The judgment regarding how much and what. There are no specific rules. But you can say, I am going to help the reader. This is it. That's one. But I am not going to say everything. And number three, I am not going to say such things that the reader will be disappointed in the end. So introduction is a kind of taking an initiative, proposing certain things, but then it should be followed by build up, twist, and finally something, the theme coming out in a pronounced way, in an explicit way by the end. Just 1 second. So that she considers as a climax. And the entire organization is towards this. And the size of the conclusion also can be fixed. You need not think the conclusion should be in 1 para, introduction need 1 para, 2 lines, no. Actually we are giving general framework. In a GS it will be different, in essay it will be different, but this is a general framework. So let me summarize. A theme. Theme sufficient to handle, high enough, but not beyond you. Not so beyond that it affects the clarity. But rise. But only to the extent that you can handle. And all organized towards a theme. That outline, sequences, paragraphs finally connected. The role of introduction is inviting. The role of conclusion is to create a climax. Please. Which one? No. Introduction is not the theme. Introduction is a hint of the theme. If you are giving entire thing in an introduction without any surprises, then it may not be advisable. Because you are going to write. Introduction is not a theme. Theme is what is conveyed through all these things. But of course, if you don't have time, and if you are, because after all she is discussing in article context, where thinking in terms of examination context, if you don't have any time, you have to wind it up, then maybe you propose theme itself in the introduction, because you don't have time. So you can vary it, but we are discussing the theory. Given your constraints, you can make the variation.
All this also the dilemma is that how do you write prior to the body itself?
How do you write?
So this is introduction, it comes to the beginning. But you have to do all the thinking that comes next.
No, introduction does not come in the beginning. What comes in the beginning? That's very important. You are not starting with introduction. You have to start with outline. Bare idea of what you are heading towards. So, and then after outline, introduction. So by outline, by the time you finish outline, you should have clarity of your mission. She discusses how detailed can outline be. Outline B. Okay. She recommends for beginners grammatically correct outlines. Grammatically outlines with grammatically correct sentences. So I found it very odd, but somewhere in the book she says, I recommend it for beginners, but I myself don't write. She writes headlines as outline. So you can write headlines as outline, bare points, but with clarity of the sequences and the proposed points. Okay? And then you go towards introduction. So why is this logical? Let us look at, it's not somebody's commandment. So why is this logical? I think introduction is a kind of an invitation. This is what I am going to do. Okay. And then theme is a way of giving unity. And then the conclusion is finally have to say, this is what I wanted to say. No. Conclusion is a kind of a, says it is an equivalent of climax. Summary is a repetition. Summary is people summarize with an idea in case you didn't understand. Summary is not that. Summary is that. But this climax is finally this is it. Summary is a kind of a repetition in case you have not understood. This is what I wanted to say.
So does conclusion include solutions?
It can, whatever. We will discuss. We'll take examples. We're looking at the theory. Outline as outline. Okay, you want to take an example. We are going to take assignments. So, no, let us look at theoretically. Introduction as a kind of an invitation, and conclusion as a climax, and everything body as a part of developing, and with a theme. She didn't insist on one theme, but I am insisting because this is very important. If you should be in a position to say in few words. Please.
The essay topic is about some argument. Still there can be many themes for it.
No, you may have plus and minus, but out of the plus and minus you have something to say. What you have something to say in essence is the theme. An essay cannot have multiple themes. Essay finally involves a judgment. You have arguments in favor, arguments against, but finally what is your judgment? So that judgment is the theme. Not multiple views and multiple themes, not like that.
Still it will be revolving around the topic, the argument itself.
Yes, it will be revolving around the topic.
Then that itself will be the theme.
No, theme is about, so nuclear energy is a solution. If your theme is it's too dangerous, then that is dangerous. That's too dangerous is a theme. But you will not only talk about how dangerous it is, you will also talk about why some people think it is a solution to energy problem. So you will consider other views, you will consider justification, you will have plus, minus arguments, and finally you have something to say. So it is what you wanted to say, that is the thing. We will take examples and
With intro and theme, we are giving them a peek into what our perspective is.
exactly. with an introduction, you are giving a peep into what we are going to talk about.
But by conclusion, are we making a statement or giving an end to what went through?
Yes, giving an end. But then if you think that there is some other point, then you can state it. But as far as that subject, you are giving an end.
Sir, can we take a stand in the introduction?
You can. If you can take a stand in introduction, and by conclusion time you can reject the stand. That is climax. Different kinds of ends are possible. Or you can take a stand, but then in the end you say this is all one-sided, but there is another story. So that's how some movies are made, right? One problem is solved, and then the next problem comes. Say bye. So that is the conclusion. Sorry, clear about para connection, para size, and everything tied to through the clarity and theme level. And here she says certain things. I mean, those words may be important. She says, relevance is not the same thing as logical continuity. This is very important. People want to write whatever they know about the subject. In fact, it is through that people destroy the essay. If some subject, they have read so many things and they are not integrated in the mind, so they cannot be integrated outside. So whatever, just want to write everything. But a good essay requires not what all you know that is relevant to the topic, but logical continuity. It is not about display of your knowledge. Knowledge only to the extent that the continuity condition is satisfied. This is an extremely important thing. When you are writing, some pieces of information are very attractive. They will say, yes, this is an article published in some great journal. You please come and come. You quote me, quote me. Avoid. If it is following naturally as a part of logical continuity, it automatically comes. You don't go out and somehow cover it and then put it in the essay. So if you have understood thinker well, and if it is coming out naturally in a logically connected way, then it makes sense. But if I want to say, I know the thinker and I want to somehow put him in my essay, then it doesn't. So many things may be relevant, but good essay goes by continuity. So she introduces another point. It is sidelines or side points, sideline points. There are so many sideline points which one should not be distracted by. The sideline points don't come under the main. They are always distracting. So whatever that stands the scrutiny of the logical connection, one should include. Which doesn't, leave it. So theme level, and from theme level, outline, sequences, within a sequence, paragraphs, then sidelines eliminated. Focus exclusively on logical continuity. Introduction as a way of inviting, and conclusion is a climax.
GS answers also, like, should we go with logical continuity?
GS is a challenge of Um, yeah, we'll come to the exam. But is this point clear? Then we'll have our own problems. Is this clear, right?
Is there a general limit on parasites?
No. Of course, I think more than 15 lines. It's a question of readability. But paragraph variation itself is a style of writing. Sometimes you can make long, sometimes. But too long may not be good for reading.
Can we carry a sub-idea in 2 or 3 paragraphs?
Can you carry?
Sub-idea, like sub-themes are there.
Within a theme.
There's some social dimension.
These sequences are sub-themes only.
Can we carry that in 2 or 3 paragraphs?
Yes, of course. You can, if, for example, you are examining something in terms of economic, political, social. Economic is one sequence, political is one sequence, social is another sequence. But all are connected to a theme like that. So it's focus on logical continuity and all connected to the theme, and theme chosen in such a way high enough given your competence, size and time. Or maybe okay, size doesn't matter much, time, because definitely you can write more words. Word limit is not so important, it's the time limit that is crucial. So is it clear? Now, okay. She asked. No.
Regarding conclusion, sometimes you just do not have conclusions.
You cannot say I don't have a conclusion. That is to say I don't have a theme. If you say I just said what I read and I don't have a conclusion, it can't be. Remember, if you are not in a position to conclude, then that becomes a theme. It is very difficult to say whether there should be nuclear reactors or not. That is the thing. That's the thing. Conclusion does not mean a definitive opinion, fixed opinion, not necessary, but the essence of what you thought. So you can't say I don't have a conclusion. Okay. So, theme level, and another question she addresses and asks is that's a very important issue, is that whom are we writing? Who is the audience? Or who are the readers? Who is the audience? She says that is a very, very important issue in an article. Whom are you writing to? Who are expected to read? In a specialized journal, then you can assume that readers know a lot about the discipline. But in a newspaper, that is different. So she discussed those things, but in our context of the examination, this is a very important question. So we know examiner are the readers. The article is meant to inform people, but an examination is a strange situation that it's not meant to inform others, but you are meant to tell others that you know. So what is the audience level here? What actually is, I think this is a very serious issue. If you say, see, I want to convey to person already knows, then what is the need to convey at all? So what is the level you should assume? So at what level you should write? I mean, that is to say, how much to explain, how much and what to explain, and what to take for granted. This is an issue. Definitely you can't explain everything, isn't it? Nor you can say anyway you know. Okay. So what is your answer to this? I think in the examination context, the issue is, given the size and, okay, maybe you can throw light on this. Whom are we addressing in the exam? My idea is that candidate is not explaining to the examiner, candidate is explaining to somebody who doesn't know, and examiner is watching. This is my idea of the exam. I want you to think about it, argue, reflect. Because the examiner already knows. So you are not educating the examiner, but explaining to somebody who doesn't know. And the examiner is examining how well you are explaining and what you are explaining. Based on that, he rewards. So if you think examiner anyway knows and I don't have to explain, is wrong. Because it is not about whether the examiner knows or not. It is about this. Okay. So which means that if there is a novelty in idea, she discussed these points about novelty. It's an extremely unusual. It's very unusual, then explain more. Okay. If it is obvious, then explain less. She uses the word over explanation and under explanation. Both need to be avoided. So over explanation is explaining in detail the obvious. Under explanation is some critical point, novel idea, which is not very obvious, and you do it very carelessly. But then you will have to decide. These are not set of rules. These are only the issues on which you need to reflect. Okay? Because in this process, it is not very clear what is the knowledge level we should assume of this person. Isn't it? Even if you assume that you are explaining to somebody and the examiner is watching, but who tells anything about what is the knowledge you should assume of this person? Isn't it? It is all assumption. So, here there are certain issues. So, in the context of the level of theme, size and time, maybe one needs to work out which is very critical. For example, you are mentioning a thinker, is a rare thinker, only you have read, only it is discussed only in your class, then spend more time. Some event which everybody knows, then you can spend less time. So definitely you need to apply your judgment regarding where to explain more, where to explain less. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. Any questions? Okay. Today we will start with one small writing assignment. Go through that article. The Parrot's Tale. While reading it, underline important points. What does the author want to say? You can take that question. What did Tagore want to convey through that story? Do you agree with his views on education? You can take 15 minutes. Please make full sentences. Full sentences. And in paras. We will discuss point-wise writing, diagrams and flowcharts later, but now write full sentences, write in paras. Choose a theme that you can handle, supported by points. Write an outline first. After thinking of theme. Theme first, outline next. And outline can be as detailed as possible.